All right, this is some more of those examples with weighted out averages by percents. This was in our section 2B2. Just want to make sure we did all of the ones together that were supposed to be there. We did number 6 in class together at the very, very end, so that should be on the recording for that. But let's look at number 7. So it says many surveys use a Likert scale where 1 is strongly disagree and 5 is strongly agree. The table below shows the results of, sorry, I was making sure it was sharing correctly. The results of a recent survey. Use the results to calculate the final score out of 5. So again, this isn't out of 100 points. This is out of 5. But our percents, as long as they add up to 100, then we don't have to do any counts for this type of problem. It's just using those percentages. So let's make sure our percentages add up to 100. We have 3 plus 13 plus 21 plus 23 plus 40. That is 100%. Okay, so we are all good for that. So now what we do is you do your value times your percent as a decimal. So each of these we would need to convert to decimal form. So 0.03, 0.13. Remember, that's just moving your decimal 2 places to the left, or divide by 100. 0.21, 0.23, 0.40. Okay, so then we multiply each score or value by that as a decimal. So let's get the first one. So 1 times 0.03 is 0.03. And then 2 times 0.13 is 0.26. Then we have 3 times 0.21, which is 0.63. Then we have 4 times 0.23, which is 0.92. And then finally, we have 5 times 0.4. Now that's the largest of the percentages. So notice this is going to add a lot to our score at the end because it was weighted heavily. So if we add these up, we have 2 plus 0.92 plus 0.63 plus 0.26 plus 0.03. That's a 3.81. So notice this is a 5-point scale. So we're not getting a score out of 100, we're getting a score out of 5. So roughly, the bulk of people were in that 3 and above range. So it kind of makes sense that we're almost out of 4. There was a lot less response in the 1 and 2 range. We did have response there, but not as much as the heavier weights at the top. Okay, let's look at another example. Now, this one I want to do using Excel just to show you how you can use some of the formulas in Excel. And then we're going to go and talk about your project for a second. I'm going to pull that up and look at it because I want you to see that you have a template. So you don't have to create it from scratch like I'm about to do. But you have a template and how to make sure that you know how to use these specific formulas. So let me pull up Excel and I'm going to do a split screen and try to make this a little bigger. All right, and then let's zoom in on Excel because those cells are really tiny. Okay, so let me make sure my share is, yep, it's showing the split screen. Okay, so we have this person is taking essentially a class in a math course, and these were, let's say these were their weights. So we have our categories. And again, you don't have to create it from scratch when you do your project because you will already have a template. So the categories they gave us were test, projects, quizzes, homework. Okay. And then we're going to get our category averages. Now I'm going to do that at the bottom of this screen. I'm going to make another table and do the averages. We're also going to need our category percents. I'm going to make these bigger so we can read what we're looking at. Category percent. And then we're going to have what we call our percentage points. That's how much did they earn towards their final grade. And so that last part down here will be a sum of all of those. So we'll get a final grade. And that's going to be in this column underneath the percentage points. So like I said, you do not have to learn how to create this template by yourself. We're going to give you one. But I am going to show you how to use some of the formulas in Excel. So we have test. We have projects, quizzes. So I'm going to list out their actual grades down here. This is like their workbook essentially. So the test, they had a 50, an 85, and a 90. For projects, we had a 5, a 95, and a 70. For quizzes, we had 90, 95, 80, 87, 77, 85. And for homework, we had 4 100s, and then an 80 and a 50, another 100, a 90, and a 98. Okay, so I'm going to kind of make two separate tables here. This one's going to be, and again, you have a template, so you don't have to worry about that. So I'm just going to make this a table. And then I'm going to make, and I wanted that to be, you don't have to make it a table. Yeah, I'm not going to, because it's just going to try and make the extra columns at the top since I already labeled everything. Anyways, I'm going to have down here at the end, what are my category averages for each of these? I'll move that over one column. Okay, so what you do to get the average, because that's what we want to fill in for this category average for each group, we go down here and we say equals. You type in the word average in Excel, and usually you'll see it populate as you type it in. I'm looking for the one that actually says average the word with nothing else after it. So no A's, ifs, D average, we don't want that. We just want average. Then you highlight by using I'm using my left clicker on my mouse to highlight that. And oops, I wasn't in the cell. Hang on. We need to open a parentheses, then highlight it. So you notice it says A12 to A14. That's the cells that it's calculating. So if you don't want to highlight, you can always open the parentheses, type A12, because that's the first digit in that column, the colon sign, so that's the 2 dots, and then tell it what column part to end at. It's ending at A14. And then hit enter. So notice this person had 3 exams in that specific class, and their average on their test is about a 75. So we're going to do that for all the categories. So equals average. So this time I'll show you, I can type it in. This would be B12 to B14. It ends up being the same amount of items. There were 3 projects in this specific example. And notice that's not rounding for me. It's actually going on forever, and we want it to keep that way. Equals average. This time I'll do parentheses and highlight, because there are actually more of them this time. Notice it goes all the way down to C17. And we need one for the homeworks. Average. So if I wanted to type it just to show you the variety, this would be D12 all the way down to D, it looks like 20. And you can see that it highlights what it's calculating. Okay. You do not, and this is for your project, you do not want to go up here and start just typing the numbers in. You're going to be doing a bunch of different sheets. Well, I'll show you how to add a sheet in just a second. But you're going to be doing a lot of sheets, and you want everything to be based off of the raw data in the tables. So you want your average to populate based on any changes that we make in our table part for our actual scores. So I'm just going to put equals, and then I'm going to click on the cell with my test average. So notice it's A22. What that does for me is if, say they had a typo, say this was supposed to be a 75 and the teacher typed it in wrong or something. Well, notice that automatically updates now because I have tied it to that cell that's doing the calculation. That's how you want this to work. And then we have equals, and we're going to have this cell, and then equals this cell, and then equals, and this cell. So there's all my averages for this student's grade book. Now, the percentages, go ahead and your template, I believe, is automatically percentages. If you were doing a template from scratch or making your own, you can highlight those 4 and just put a percent symbol, and it knows to make these all percentages. So it will do the conversion to decimal in the background if it shows that it has the percent symbol when I type it in. So it looked like tests were weighted at 60%. Notice it adds the percent symbol, so it's doing that correctly. Quizzes were at 20, projects are next. Projects are at 20%, that's right. Quizzes are 15. I'm reading that off my page over here, and the homework was 5. So this was for this specific example. Now, when I go to do the percentage points, I'm going to tell it equals. Anytime you're doing Excel, you have to use equals to tell it you're going to do some kind of operation between different values. So equals category average, B4. You have a times button. You can do Shift 8 for that little star, or if you have your numeric pad, you should have a little star button for multiplication. And then we're going to be multiplying that times the category percent. Now notice, I'm not worried about that not saying 0.6 because Excel knows that if it's 60%, it uses 0.6 when it does the calculation. And we can double check that. We can do 75 times 0.6 and notice it's giving me 45, which is the correct value. And then we will do the same thing. Now, if you're doing this on your own and you don't have a template that's already pre-made, you can just do a copy paste. What you'll notice though is you'll want to double check that it's actually doing these correctly. This one's B5 times C5. This one's B6 times C6, and this one is B7 times C7. So you just want to make sure it's actually multiplying the correct values together. And then once you have all of your categories done, you're going to do a sum. So equals sum in Excel, and then we open our parentheses. And then we highlight that whole percentage point column. That's going to add up to our final grade. So this person would have a C in this class. Okay. So I'm not going to write that in over here because I already have the PDF that has that done. Like I'm not going to write all the work in, but I will write the answer that we got and put a note that it was in Excel. I think I already had that written in my previous class. We're not told what to round to, so let's do to the nearest 10th here. So this would be 73.7, which is a C. So that's what that person would have gotten. Now, we're going to be doing 2B3 together in class. So what I want to do for a minute is actually talk about the project before I end this video. So let me open up our Ivy Learn. There we go. Got all the news there. Oh, sorry. I just updated my password. There we go. I was signed in a minute ago. I guess it just forgot that I was here. All right. So did my sign in. There we go. So look at the module week 2. That's where we're going to look for all of our information in terms of project 1. So if I go under modules and I go down to week 2, let's look at this. So this is where I said to start here. This is kind of the description of the project. There's a printable of this as well. If you don't want to have to try to keep going back to read this, you can print it. So there's that little link right there to print the copy. It's just all of this typed information and a printable guide for you. So we're going to be talking about weighted averages. You're going to be using the student template. So I'm going to open that in just a second once we kind of look through this. You're going to have your template. You're going to save it. I usually recommend saving it with your name. That way you can find it easily instead of, because I've had students accidentally turn in the blank template before because they didn't like save it with a different name or they didn't update it so that they could find it easily. So if it was me, I would save it to my desktop and make sure you put your name and the title of it just so you can find it easily. So we're going to look at that template in a minute. We're going to be doing averages for all of they're going to give us a student set of data. We don't make it up. We are given it. Okay. You're going to do all the averages. We'll then come up with the calculation of their grade with the weights that are given for the course as it is. And then that'll be our first sheet. Then you will be making a second sheet. So you can do this little plus button down here. And you'll kind of just copy paste. You'll kind of copy or highlight by doing a, left click and drag. And do Control C, or you can do copy by doing right click and copy. Don't cut. You want it to stay here too. And then you'll go over to your sheet 2 and then you'll paste it. Okay. So I didn't do that on this because this one's not the project, but you'll do that. I believe it's 5 times. You need one for each question that we have. And I would even name them, like you can right click on this and do rename. And you could do like question 1, question 2. So you can change the name of each of the sheets. That'll help you know what you're looking for when you go back to write your responses. And then this just walks you through what I just did about, like what we were doing with that. Now there is a new piece with the calculating the student semester GPA weighted by counts. So it says calculate the student semester GPA, which we did a GPA problem in class, and there's one on the weekly video as well. So there's a provided GPA calculation table. The sample student semester course credits, hours for each, anticipated grade and grade value are provided for all courses except the Math 123. So you have to find and enter the letter grade you got from your number one question for the Math 123 GPA table. So we're only going to use that one situation. We're not going to like use all the different variations. Type the associated grade value for the Math 123 grade, and then we'll use, we'll talk about how you can use that to do the GPA. So write an Excel formula to calculate the course to earn GPA points for each class using cell references. So things like multiplying to the right of the total credits and total points earned. So we're going to look at this in a second. It's a lot harder to understand what this is without the template open. Last, calculate the semester GPA using the formula with the cell reference to the points divided by the total credits. So, and they even tell you kind of how to place this on the table. Yeah, so like I said, you're going to copy your questions, and you're going to so you're copying your whole table once you're done, and you're going to move that to questions 1, 2, 3. You're going to make multiple sheets. Then once you're all done, you will write up your responses to each question. We do have some things about if you need to use Google Sheets to do your problem, if you need writing support, there's the Writing Center. So a lot of this is really just kind of making sure that you are following the directions, okay? And then this is really important. Read this. This is when we talk about written responses, I don't want one sentence or badly written sentences where you don't even capitalize the beginning of the sentence, or you don't put periods, or you don't speak in what we consider conversational, English. We don't want to be using LOL and things like that. So don't use text English like you're texting someone. So this is like a good example of how to explain something. Okay, so there's an example right there of what you should be looking for your descriptions. Don't copy that one, but make sure you use that using numerical information to explain what you did. Okay, so let's pull up, let's go to the template next. Let me pull up that and open it over here. Put that where mine was. So this is what I was talking about. Your template already has multiple things, okay? So it looks a little different than the one I made, which is fine. But this is for questions 1 and 2. So I guess you'll only have to make up to 4 total sheets because we used to have questions 1 and 2 split into separate sheets. So you'll do what we did a minute ago. You'll talk about getting your averages, and you can actually just do it over here. So I'll show you for this first one. I want to do the average of the midterm test. You do still want to type equals average. Oh, I need to enable editing. Otherwise, it won't let me do it. So let me zoom in over here. So equals average. And then we'll go over to the midterm column, which there's only one exam, but you still want to do it that way. And you'll do that. And notice it's just itself. So for example, test review, there's 2 items. So if we're looking at that one, equals average, I'll be highlighting both of those or typing in the keystrokes. And then for this part, it's just like what I was doing earlier with our example. We're going to be doing equals our percentage times our average. And notice that gives me my percentage points. And then remember, you sum that for your yellow, and then you write the letter grade in. You just type in a letter grade. And you can look at our Ivy Tech syllabus for the letter grade breakdowns. So then say we come down here, and I'm just making this up. Let's say this student had a letter grade of D for the Math 123, just to give some variety here. That would be worth only, remember, 2 points if you look at the GPA value here. And then remember, this is like what we did for the one in class. You need to first get your total number of credits. So you'll want to sum that. And then you're going to do each of these equals this times this. Number of credit hours times what was the value of the grade you got. You'll do that for each of those. You'll sum those for the total points earned. And then remember, you need to refer back to your notes on how to calculate GPA. Essentially, it's a division that you need to do, but make sure you will go back to your notes. So once you get all that done and everything's filled in, you don't want to delete anything. You just want to remember, highlight the whole thing. Make sure everything's highlighted. You might have to drag it a bit. Control C, notice my little lines are dancing. That means it's copied it, and you'll paste that over. Okay. So that is going to be how you start working through your project. The big part is you're going to have to read what each of the questions is asking you to do, because when you get to these, it might say something like, you know, what if the professor drops a quiz? I'm just kind of making up an example. Well, if they drop a quiz, you would drop that out. Or they drop the lowest test review or something like that. You drop it out, and notice that changes my average right here. And you might need to readjust some of these if you're like I'm a perfectionist. Once I copied them over, they kind of squished. So I usually do some readjustment when I do my own Excel sheets and things like that. But that's kind of the gist of it. You're going to go through each question. Remember, had a description. If you look back here at what you were supposed to do for each question. So like we go down, I think it's mostly towards this part. Yeah, these are the project questions. So, you know, how did you create your grade book? Determine their semester GPA. Both of those were done in the first sheet. Exploring changing grades of different ways, you know, semester GPA counted by counts, what if? So we're going to play with the GPA again. Identifying averages, weighted averages by category, presents, and by count. So notice each part has its own questions, and I recommend having a Word document open off to the side and just type your responses, even if they're not perfectly done. It's kind of like a draft. Type up what you're doing. I would do it almost as you do each question. So when you're working on question 1 and 2, go ahead and answer both of those questions fully on your Word document as well. And then when you move on to do your next part, which would be Q3, so I would like rename this. I usually just say Q3. You don't have to rewrite question. But then when you're working on this one, you can focus just on this question at that time. I hope you find that helpful. It does tell you have to upload your spreadsheet at the end. That is worth half of the points almost. So like, you know, it's, I think the total points, are they 150? I don't remember if it says that. I know it says it on the assignment when you go to submit it. Let's look at that. But I can't give you points for a picture. You have to actually have the Excel document, because I need to be able to see and click on these and see what you typed into the formulas. So it has to be a physical spreadsheet where I can click on the cells and see what the actual input value is. There are 2 videos that are a little more involved than what I'm doing with you guys right now. I just wanted to kind of touch base because we didn't get to talk about it much in class. Yeah, the whole thing is 100 points. So yeah, uploading your project part is a huge percentage. So like if you don't actually upload the spreadsheet, you're not going to pass the project on just answering questions by word. Okay, so that's the end of this video. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you guys in class today.